Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Let's just jump right into it. If you're anywhere in the construction industry, whether you're a contractor, a consultant, a claims specialist, or project manager, I guarantee you've heard this phrase. There was no critical path impact, right? As soon as those words are spoken, the assumption is just automatic. No delay to the critical path means no extension of time, and therefore zero loss suffered by the contractor. Case closed, stamp it, file it away. But is that actually true? Today, we're going to unpack one of the most misunderstood, frankly heavily debated concepts in project scheduling, float. We'll be looking closely at this massive professional debate happening right now between traditional schedulers and modern claims analysts, and we'll see why losing that invisible project float might actually be costing a whole lot more than people realize. So, let's frame our whole discussion around this one big question. Is critical path analysis alone really sufficient for a fair extension of time, or EOT, evaluation? Now, to be clear, we are absolutely not here to bash consultants, clients, or the critical path method itself. CPM is a fantastic methodology. It's the gold standard for a reason. But as professionals, we need to ask ourselves if relying exclusively on it truly captures the messy, dynamic, and highly complex realities of modern construction. Like, if the final completion date doesn't change, does that genuinely mean no harm was done? Here's a quick look at our agenda for today. 1. The dominance of CPM. 2. The critical path illusion. 3. Float is not free time. 4. Hidden costs of disruption. And finally, 5. A balanced evaluation approach. Okay, starting with Section 1, the dominance of CPM, the industry standard for EOT claims. Just to ground us, an extension of time is simply that contractual mechanism that grants a contractor extra time to finish a project because of excusable delays. And CPM? Well, it became the undisputed heavyweight champion for evaluating these EOT claims because its strengths are just undeniable. It gives us clear mathematical logic. For contract administrators and engineers, it provides this wonderfully objective black and white standard to see exactly which delays actually push back the final delivery date. It takes the emotion and guesswork right out of complex scheduling disputes. But here's the catch. That heavy reliance on pure schedule math creates this extremely common scenario where claims are just instantly denied. Let's say a delay hits, maybe a delayed design approval or late site access or even a prolonged material approval. What happens? Evaluators immediately look at the CPM. If the final completion date hasn't moved and there's no direct impact on the critical path, boom, claim rejected. The conclusion is almost universally that the contractor didn't suffer any real loss. But as you'll see, this brings us to a really critical crossroad in how we view what's actually happening out in the dirt. Which brings us to Section 2, the critical path illusion, when the schedule math ignores site reality. Picture this real-world scenario. You've got a road project with a 24-month contract. Month 1, everything kicks off. The contractor has built this incredibly efficient, tightly sequenced program, and through sheer operational excellence, manages to create 20 days of float. Things are humming along perfectly. Then month 10 rolls around and a client-caused problem pops up. Let's call it a utility relocation delay that lasts exactly 15 days. Well, because the contractor had those 20 days of float built in, the schedule math shows that at month 24, the final completion date hasn't shifted a single inch. So, look at the contrast here. On one hand, you have the traditional consultant review. They look at that 15-day utility delay, see it didn't touch the critical path, note the end date is identical, and reject the EOT. And honestly, from a pure traditional CPM perspective, they are 100% right by the book. But talk to the contractor, and it is a completely different story. Their reality on the ground, it's chaos. Even though the end date didn't mathematically move, their resources were severely disrupted, careful sequences were thrown entirely out of whack, and their vital schedule flexibility was just wiped out. Moving to Section 3, float is not free time. Let's talk about the economic value of schedule flexibility. We really need to get absolutely clear on what float actually is. Technically speaking, sure, it's the amount of time an activity can be delayed without pushing out the project's completion date. But there is a massive industry-wide misconception that float is just free time, like it's just sitting there for anyone to gobble up. Not true at all. Contractors actively create float. They earn it through meticulous planning, crazy optimized work sequences, and incredibly smart resource allocation. It has real, tangible economic value. Now, I know this sparks the whole controversy over who actually owns the float, the project, or the contractor, but regardless of what side you take there, we have to acknowledge it is a hard-earned asset, not some happy accident. I love this way of thinking about it. Float is project insurance. It really is. It's the safety buffer that lets the project team handle extreme weather, sudden material shortages, or just bizarre site conditions. It is your rainy day fund in a highly unpredictable environment. So, what actually happens when a client caused delay eats up that float? Well, the reality is pretty brutal. The project's entire risk buffer is severely reduced. Your future schedule flexibility is just gone. Resource planning suddenly becomes a nightmare because your margin for error has basically vanished. The contractor is now highly exposed to any future delays. The schedule might technically tell you, hey, we're finishing on time today, but tomorrow? Tomorrow, that project is operating without a safety net. Let's look at Section 4, Hidden Costs of Disruption, the financial bleed before the critical path. We need to talk about the actual financial bleed happening out on the site during these non-critical delays. When that 15-day delay hits, even if it's not on the critical path, heavy equipment starts idling. You've got excavators and dump trucks just sitting there in the dirt. But guess what? Those rental costs are still ticking away, and you're getting zero production out of them. Then there's labor. Your crews show up, but their planned work area isn't ready, so they wait. Activities get frantically resequenced, efficiency falls off a cliff, but the contractor is still paying full wages. And don't even get me started on management costs. Project managers are pulling their hair out, spending hours revising schedules, shuffling resources, and drafting claims. Administrative overhead absolutely skyrockets. And here is the harsh truth that the industry often ignores. Lost productivity is rarely, if ever, recovered completely. Sure, when you're dealing with resource-based delays or concurrent delays, the schedule might theoretically recover on paper later on. But lost productivity literally equals permanently lost capital. The contractor ends up bleeding significantly more money just to get the exact same result they planned for on day one. Actual project performance takes a massive hit, even while the theoretical schedule looks totally fine. Finally, Section 5, a balanced evaluation approach, rethinking how we measure project harm. So knowing all of this, we have to step back and ask a fundamental question. Does the absence of critical path impact always mean the contractor suffered no loss? If a delay triggers massive resource disruption, idle labor, idling equipment, and burns through a super valuable chunk of float, should we really just look at the schedule math and pretend nothing happened? Modern critics are increasingly pointing out that these massive blind spots in traditional CPM are leaving contractors holding the bag for very real, very painful project damage. So, what's the fix? Well, a truly holistic EOT evaluation still needs to look at the critical path. CPM isn't going anywhere, it's still essential. But modern claims experts are strongly advocating that we complement it with advanced methodologies, things like time impact analysis, or TIA, and windows analysis. These give us a much clearer, dynamic picture of the project in real time. On top of that, we could look at contract reforms that incorporate resource-based analysis, productivity analysis, and earned value indicators, all backed by real-time digital project controls. These modern tools let us actually track productivity loss and flow consumption right alongside the CPM, proving that a project can take a huge operational and financial beating long before the critical path ever moves. Float is absolutely not just worthless free time. It is a highly valuable, earned asset. So, I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. Should the construction industry continue evaluating EOT claims primarily through the lens of critical path impact? Or is it finally time for a more balanced, holistic approach? It's a debate we absolutely must have if we want to ensure fairness and better contract administration moving forward. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today, and remember to always question how we measure the reality out there on the site. Catch you next time.